The National Weather Service.
Indie Alaska is an innovative weekly web series capturing the diverse and colorful lifestyle of Alaskans. Real stories of everyday Alaskans at work and play. Supported in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company.
Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of AKwx, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
And good evening. Happy Tuesday to you all. Welcome to the show. I'm meteorologist Mike Ottenweller with the National Weather Service, and we'll be discussing the forecast for the next couple of minutes here. Taking a look first and foremost at how you can reach us for more information. You can call our weather line at 1-800-472-0391. Also, you can find us online at arh.noaa.gov, and on social media, keep up in touch with us at NWS Alaska on Facebook, and that'll bring you for the Juneau and Fairbanks and Anchorage office. NWS Alaska on Twitter, we're using the hashtag AKwx to get a regional perspective. And then you can find this show later on tonight after the show is complete on YouTube. So tomorrow we do have a drill for tsunamis. Just don't be alarmed, folks. This is only a drill. We'll test our tsunami warning system tomorrow morning at 10:15 a.m. through the EAS network, so you will likely see it scrolling on the bottom of your screen or possibly playing on your radio. It is just a test. We would like it, though, to know if you received the message and how you received it. So please log on to our website or feel free to give us a call at the office and let us know exactly how you got the information, and that would be much appreciated. Help us to hone in on our network in case we do have a real tsunami. Also, looking into Wednesday afternoon, we are looking for some fire danger in the Matanuska Valley. We do expect winds to be on the increase, and we'll discuss that a little bit more in detail for the next few minutes here. But winds will be on the increase, and our very dry conditions and limited snowpack out there will make for fire weather danger for the Matanuska Valley Wednesday afternoon. So take precautions and be advised of that condition. So looking at our satellite tonight, we can see things are going to start to ramp up here. We've had our beautiful sunny skies over much of the state this afternoon and the last couple days, and warm temperatures. We are going to see a little bit more active weather pattern as this low pressure system starts to approach from the North Pacific into the Gulf of Alaska. Now it's going to struggle to make it all the way into the Gulf because of the high pressure that is in charge over the state, but nonetheless it will make a northward advancement and start to bring some precipitation to coastal areas. As you can see out over the Bering Sea here in eastern portion of the Aleutians, we do have a weakening frontal system that has moved through there, bringing some snow and a little bit of blowing snow to the Pribilof Islands. And then further out to the western Bering, high pressure remains in charge out here, and it continues to wrap in some cold air, bringing some snow showers to those areas. And we'll look at that a little bit more in depth on the surface map. Out over the mainland, very clear sunny skies once again today. Warm temperatures with the ample March sunshine moving in with more than 12 hours of daylight now. And just a weak trough feature here hanging out over the west coast, northwest coast. That will come into play later on as we look into the latter part of the week. But for now, just a mostly sunny skies and clear day across the mainland. Off into southeast Alaska, we do have this occluded boundary here, and we'll talk about that on the surface maps, but as you can see, that is starting to punch into the Dixon Entrance region and bring a little bit of rain and some winds into those areas. Taking a look now at those surface maps, you can see here we do have our low pressure system and our frontal boundary starting to work its way into the Gulf of Alaska at 975 millibars, and a weak trough swinging through from Kodiak Island back towards the Cold Bay region, bringing just a little bit of light rain there. Cold air is pretty hard to come by right now, and so we only see our rain-snow mix just for the points there near Cape Newingham. We do have a little bit of blowing snow along the west coast and down towards the Pribilof Islands, and with that we do expect just reduced visibilities from time to time. Out over the Aleutians, as we mentioned, we see those pockets of snow showers, fairly light, but they are impacting the central and western Aleutians. Out over the mainland, once again, a very clear and sunny day for most folks over the mainland Alaska, and up over the northwest portion of the state there is that trough, bringing just a little bit of patchy fog and some blowing snow for areas like Point Lay. And then as we work back towards southeast Alaska, you can see there we do have that occluded boundary, that frontal system down there, and with that we are expecting some precipitation to move into the area, and that will continue to be the case for the next several days. On into tonight, there is that precipitation starting to spread a little bit further northward now. Our weakening warm front is well down south of the area, but nonetheless more warm air moving towards the state, keeping things all rain for coastal areas as we go into tonight. The only real snow or mixed precipitation we'll find is out over the eastern Aleutians and towards the central Aleutians. And then again, that weak area of lower pressure up along the west coast of Alaska, bringing just some patchy clouds for now into those regions. As we step into Wednesday's forecast, we do see that area of low pressure has slid a little bit further north, now down to 971 millibars. And it is wrapping precipitation all the way back from Kodiak Island, all the way now through the Dixon Entrance into Juneau's area. Most coastal areas, not expecting a lot of precipitation accumulation, but this will be a pretty steady rainmaker for those coastal areas. The other thing that we will be talking about, as we mentioned earlier, is those winds will increase on Wednesday. And we'll get into that here in a few minutes in our aviation portion of the forecast. But as that gradient starts to tighten up over south central Alaska, with our high moving off finally into Canada and our low sliding up, we will see an increase in winds, especially for the Matanuska Valley and areas that have favorable northeast flow, like the Cook Inlet and Shelikof Strait. Again, out over the Bering Sea, we do have high pressure still in control and keeping things extremely quiet out there. Very tranquil weather conditions for March out in those regions. And here is our trough over the mainland starting to interact with a little bit more cold air sliding in from the northwest. And with that, we do expect to see some snow showers start to pick up over the interior portion of the state on Wednesday. On into Thursday now, we can see our frontal boundary has made a little bit more advancement along the north coast, and with that, rain continues for most of those areas. Not until you get inland over interior Canada do you start to see that mix in with a little bit of snow, but for most areas it'll just be rain. For the Cook Inlet region, we do expect on Thursday that will be our best chance for precipitation. A little bit of snow for Susitna Valley, and likely a little bit of snow for portions of the higher elevations, rain and snow, and mostly rain for the lower elevations at sea level. Our low is down to 984 millibars now as it continues to weaken, and high pressure out over the Bering remains in control, keeping just some light snow showers there for the central and eastern Aleutians. Over the mainland, we see calm conditions again with just some patchy fog along the Arctic coast and clouds over much of the interior portion of the state. So now we get into our high temperatures for today. Again, another very balmy day across the region. You can see down in southeast Alaska anywhere from 46 up to 48 degrees. Very spring-like conditions for those folks as well. As we look towards south central Alaska, mid to lower 40s with Homer once again coming in at 50 degrees. Anchorage topping out around 41 degrees this afternoon. And looking up a little bit further north in Susitna Valley, Talkeetna at 42 degrees. And a pretty nice day throughout south central. As we slide a little bit farther towards the interior in northern Alaska, we can see Fairbanks at 34 degrees this afternoon. And up and towards the Tanana Valley, we had Arctic Village come in around 10 degrees. And it wasn't until you reached up north of the Brooks Range that you saw those below zero temperatures once again, continuing the cold air mass up there. But the rest of the state has received that southerly push of warm air that has been in place for several days, as much as 10 days now. So looking for minus 14 up near Barrow. And as we stretch out towards the Seward Peninsula, minus 3 and 17 there at Nome. Taking a look down now towards southwest Alaska, mainly mid to lower 40s for those folks. 43 degrees there for you in Bethel, and looks like 32 at McGrath. Down towards King Salmon, 44 degrees and 45 at Dillingham. And as we slide out into the Aleutian Range, 38 degrees there at Sand Point, and we saw 41 degrees for Dutch Harbor. Off into the central Aleutians, we had mid-30s, and well out into Shimia's area, we had 32 degrees as the high temperature. So taking a look for tonight's low temperatures, slide over and take a look at southeast Alaska. We do expect, again, mainly 30 degrees to the lower 40s for much of southeast Alaska. Again, pretty quiet night there with clear skies once again being in control until we see the next approaching front. As we look towards the south central area, we see upper 20s and low 30s with just a little bit of an increase in cloud cover from that approaching frontal system. Southwest Alaska, you can expect low to upper 30s. Over the interior portion of the state, anywhere from the single digits to low teens for those folks. And as we get towards the Arctic coast, not a whole lot of change from our afternoon highs. Temperatures still running on the order of -15 below zero. Out over the Seward Peninsula, we'll see Nome come in around 15 tonight. And then looking at the west coast, anywhere from the mid to lower 20s out there. Out over the Aleutian chain, eastern Aleutians and sliding off into the western Aleutians, anywhere from upper to lower 30s as you work your way westward. And for tomorrow's high temperatures, again, southeast Alaska coming in the mid 40s, not expecting a significant change from today. As we look towards south central, mid 40s for those folks as well. And then in southwest Alaska, lower 40s and upper 30s. Coldest air remains confined up to the Arctic coast there, where we'll reach just barely below zero. And for the central portions of the interior, 39 degrees at Fairbanks and 19 degrees at Nome. Out over the Aleutians, expect high 40s and then sliding down into the lower 30s as we get into to the afternoon on the western portion of the Aleutian chain. Taking a look at tomorrow's flying weather, we do see IFR conditions wrapping around that frontal system over the Gulf of Alaska, stretching mainly from the Dixon Entrance region over towards Kodiak Island. A small pocket of IFR conditions expected as that decaying system that we saw on the surface map there falls apart tomorrow over the the southern portion of the Bering Sea. And then just some pockets of MVFR conditions. Taking a look at our passes now, you're going to see a trend here for visual flight rules with Anaktuvik and Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill are going to dominate with VFR. Rainy will be also VFR, windy VFR, and Isabel VFR. Mentasta will be VFR, Tanita VFR, Portage also VFR, though we do expect some increasing winds there later on in the afternoon period. Chilkoot and White will be also VFR. And taking a look at our surface map for our freezing level map, we see that the surface is where that freezing level tends to be for the most of the state. And it's not until you climb out over the Gulf that our warmer temperatures bring that surface line all the way up to 6,000 to 8,000 feet. Again, we're warming well above freezing during the afternoon time, but the morning temperatures are still dropping below, keeping our surface below freezing. For our icing tomorrow, we do expect some light, occasional moderate for a large section in the Gulf of Alaska around that low pressure system, mainly above 4,000 feet. And then we do expect as you get further down into the Gulf, we have occasional widespread moderate right around the strongest area of winds. Above 3,000 feet, a little bit of occasional widespread moderate for icing out over the eastern Aleutians. Taking a look at our jet stream now, we have it coming in from the west, moving quickly in at 180 and then diving down south, helping to support this low pressure system at 135 knots and trailing off into Canada at 130 knots. Our northern tier of energy is fairly weak at only 75 knots, and that trails off into Canada at about 45 knots. Looking at our winds around our low pressure system, we do have the strongest winds just to the east of the low here, and those will move into the Kodiak Island region between 45 and 50 knots. Southeast flow there at 9,000 feet, and we do expect that to create some turbulence as we look at our turbulence here in just a moment. High pressure keeping things relatively quiet out over the Bering, and weakening high pressure that was over the state for the past few days will keep things very quiet over here. And then as we get into southeast Alaska, we do expect about 35 to 50 knots out of the southeast, creating some turbulence for folks in those regions there. Again, looking now at 30,000 feet, our strongest winds to the east and north of this low pressure system. And as they interact with terrain, we do expect some turbulence in these regions here, with about 50 knots out of the southeast coming into the Kenai Peninsula. As we step over and look at the high pressure dominating the Bering Sea, we see northeast flow between 20 and 40 knots coming through the eastern Bering. For tomorrow's turbulence, expect the worst conditions to be in southeast Alaska and towards the eastern Kenai Peninsula, working its way down to Kodiak Island. We'll expect occasional widespread moderate below about 6,000 feet for those folks, and then that'll stretch out into the Aleutian chain, isolated moderate below 4,000 feet. Stay tuned. We'll be back with the marine forecast.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jessica Cherry.
And I'm Forrest Kirst, a commercial pilot.
And today we're going to talk about an experiment we're doing using a small aircraft where we've mounted a sensor package to the aircraft to measure temperature, humidity, and pressure, as well as elevation and longitude and latitude of the airplane. And with the package, we're going to sample the local winter inversion here in Fairbanks, Alaska. And an inversion is where you have the surface atmosphere that's closest to the land is colder than the atmosphere above it, which is the opposite of normal conditions throughout the year throughout North America. Forrest, maybe you could tell us more about how a pilot experiences an inversion during the wintertime.
On the ground during our pre-flight, it's very cold out. This morning it's minus 28 centigrade, which is about minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So doing our pre-flight, it's extremely cold, hard on the airplane, hard on the people.
For flying at the colder temperatures for doing these experiments, we're somewhere between minus 20 and minus 40 degrees. So we have to dress for that temperature inside the airplane as well as when we're outside of the airplane. When we're doing our pre-flight, we have to be extremely careful not to damage the plastic parts on the outside of the airplane. Extremely careful not to touch the metal parts with our fingers because we'll get contact frostbite. And we have to be real careful just with everything because it's just so cold. We have to dress as if we're going to be outdoors the whole time, and we use the aircraft heater to make it comfortable in our clothes and so we can see out the window.
When we get the airplane running and we do our takeoff roll, we have increased engine performance and increased lift because of the colder, denser air. So we get off the ground earlier and have a better climb rate. When we reach the inversion layer, quite often the windows will fog up. The airplane's performance will decrease slightly because it's warmer air, produces less lift, and it produces less power from the engine.
When an inversion is present, air doesn't move anywhere, especially it doesn't want to move up. And so the classic look there is the steam out of the power plant or automobile exhaust, any kind of wood smoke or such, will come out of a chimney and then just flatten out and not move up. And if it moves horizontally at all, it's very slow, just creeping along. When you see that kind of lack of air movement, especially when there's clear skies, the sun is maybe low on the horizon, that is an inversion day in interior Alaska.
The reason it is so cool in the far north during winter is that the incoming radiation is at such a low angle. Now, as the atmosphere begins to cool in late fall, we start to get snowfall, which causes the land surface to be white, and light colors reflect incoming radiation right back, which causes additional cooling. And it's the reason we have a persistent inversion from late fall through early spring here in Fairbanks.
To get a radiation inversion to form, you need clear or mostly clear skies. You need no wind or very little wind down at the surface. And you need to have the sun under the horizon or high noon in December such that even if the sun is up, it's so low it doesn't really feed in any energy. When those three things happen, you lose heat to space from the surface of the Earth, but you're not getting any new heat in, and you get a very cold layer of air hugging the ground, cold, dense air that just lays down in the bottom of the valley. That's the classic radiation inversion setup.
So as we do our experiment with the aircraft, we're going to use a similar instrumentation package as is mounted on the standard weather balloons. We're going to measure temperature profiles, relative humidity, and pressure. And we're also going to tie the sensor package into a GPS unit, a global positioning system unit, so we know where the aircraft is located relative to the topography. So now I want to tell you about the instrument package that we're using on the aircraft. First of all, we use a NiCad 12-volt battery to power the data logger and the instruments. The data logger records the output from the meteorological sensors, which here include a temperature and relative humidity sensor and a pressure transmitter, which works like a barometer to measure atmospheric pressure. This particular one is going to plug into the static port in the aircraft, which also helps power some of the aircraft instruments. finally, we have the Global Positioning System computer, which measures the latitude, longitude, and altitude of the aircraft. This one has an accuracy of about 10 meters, which is perfectly fine for what we're trying to do here. Here's a picture of our temperature and relative humidity sensor installed on the aircraft. So this is an FAA approved plate here mounted to the window. And we want the temperature sensor mounted towards the aft of the aircraft so we don't get air rushing in and it has a chance to equilibrate to the environmental conditions. And then finally, our pressure sensor is connected to this static port in the airplane, which again just measures the ambient pressure of the atmosphere where it hits this little hole in the plane. That's piped back into our pressure sensor inside. So one of the things that we're going to go out and do today is that we're going to attach the sensor package to the aircraft, and then Forrest is going to take off from Fairbanks International.
To get repeatability for the data, we flew in and out of Fairbanks International, Nenana Airport, Ladd Army Airfield, and Eielson Airfield. So we do a very slow climb up through the inversion layer, climbing at about 100 feet per minute. Just very slow climb to the top of the inversion, find out where the ceiling is, and then once we're at the ceiling of the inversion, we do very slow porpoising up and down through the inversion to see if it's stable, if it's got different characteristics throughout it. Then we get to the next airport and we do a very slow descent into the airport at about 100 feet per minute, all the way to the ground.
And welcome back to the show. Hope you enjoyed the segment. I'm going to be taking you through the marine forecast now. Let's start with southeast Alaska. As we can see here down towards Dixon Entrance on Wednesday, expecting southeast winds at gale force 35 knots. Up towards Clarence Strait, becoming easterly 25 knots, and Lynn Canal, northerly gale force at 35 knots. Seas on the order from 5 to 7 feet for the inner passageways. Out over the Gulf of Alaska, southeast becoming easterly flow 40 to 45 knots, and seas generally on the order of 15 to 18 feet. On into Thursday, we can see things all switching to southerly or southeasterly flow from all the area. 15 to 20 knots for the inside passageways with 3 to 4 foot seas, and then expecting 20 to 25 knots out over the open waters. Seas anywhere from 8 feet in the southern portions up towards Yakutat, expecting them a little higher at 14 feet. For south central Alaska, our worst conditions should be tomorrow on Wednesday. Looking for seas to be building and winds to be increasing throughout the open waters of the Gulf, northern portions of the Gulf on Wednesday. Anywhere easterly directions from 45 to 50 knots, storm force winds, and seas 14 up to 21 feet there out over the open waters. Over Prince William Sound, northeast flow 25 knots and 6 feet. And for the Cook Inlet and stretching down to Shelikof Strait, north to northeast flow there, and 30 building all the way to 50 knots in Shelikof Strait, the favored northeasterly direction. Seas will also be building in this region from 15 up to about 20 feet by the afternoon. On into Thursday now, seeing things calm down just a little bit. Expect more of a south to southeasterly direction out over the open waters there with 30 knots and 13 to 15 feet. And for Prince William Sound, still keeping it about 6 feet in the morning, dropping off in the afternoon, but 25 knots out of the southeast. And again, that favored northeasterly flow with low pressure down in the Gulf, 30 to 40 knots there until you get down to Shelikof where it's only 25, seas between 8 and 14 feet. As we step out towards the Alaska Peninsula, 35 to 30 knots on the north side of the chain and 25 to 30 knots out of the northeast for the south side. Seas will be on the order of 5 to 11 feet north and 13 to 15 feet on the Pacific side. And then looking into Thursday now, a little bit more variable conditions, 25 knots out of the south here, just south of Chignik, 10-foot seas, becoming northerly at 15 knots. And then north of the chain, expecting 3 to 7-foot seas, northeast to north, 20 knots. On Wednesday, out over the Aleutian chain, expect generally north to northeast conditions for much of the eastern and central Aleutians at about 20 to 30 knots, and seas will be on the order of about 8 to 13 feet. And then as we get towards the western Aleutians, a little bit more towards the easterly direction, 20 knots, seas 6 feet. On into Thursday now, we switch everybody to the north or northeast and drop the winds down to 20 to 25 knots and seas between 7 and 10 feet. Towards the west coast, we expect northeast to northerly flow on Wednesday between 20 and 30 knots with seas building off the ice edge from 1 foot all the way up to 10 feet down by the Pribilof Islands. We do expect a little freezing spray down towards the Pribilofs and near the ice edge as well. On Thursday, similar conditions there, 20 to 35 knots out of the north or northeast for much of those areas, and seas down just a few feet from Wednesday. And for the Arctic coast, mainly easterly flow until you get around Point Ley and Point Hope, and then you expect things to turn to out of the north, generally 10 to 15 knots for those areas. And Thursday, not a whole lot of change, keeping things out of the northeast or easterly direction until you get off near Point Hope and northerly there, 10 to 15 knots. So let's recap tonight's forecast. Our low pressure is going to start to stir up our little bit more activity from our tranquil weather that we have been seeing. And with that, we do see precipitation increasing from southeast Alaska all the way back towards Kodiak Island, and then switching over to a rain-snow mix once you get into the eastern Aleutians. On into Wednesday now, that's when we see our gradient finally start to tighten up over south central Alaska, and with that we do have a high fire danger for Matanuska Valley with strong northeasterly flow coming through the valley there. We also have a blowing snow advisory, winter weather advisory for blowing snow for the Pribilof Islands on Wednesday from 6 a.m. until 6 a.m. Thursday. Not expecting a lot of new snow, between 1 and 2 inches, but we do see winds picking up out of the north, 25 to 40 knots, reducing visibility is about a half mile at times. So be careful if you're traveling out on the islands there. And then on into Thursday's forecast, we see that frontal system finally reach the Gulf Coast in earnest, and with that precipitation will start to spill over the mountains, the Kenai and Chugach Mountains, and bring a little bit of rain and snow mix. That'll be our best chance for precipitation on Thursday there. We continue high pressure over the Bering and some snow showers for the Aleutian chain. Thanks for watching the show this evening, and I hope you have a great night. I'm meteorologist Mike Ottenweller with the National Weather Service.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.